Hello everyone, how are you? For those who don't know me, I'm Marco Sequeira. I'm the Director of Operations at Athere. And in this video, I'm going to talk about a very relevant issue in privileged access management, which is privileged remote access management. How to use a PAM solution to provide remote access, whether for an employee who's outside the company or for a vendor, while maintaining full security, auditing, and control. Let's get started. Okay everyone, this diagram shows the entire process of how Segura provides privileged remote access to third parties, suppliers, external technical support, and internal employees as well, without needing a VPN client or opening ports on your firewall. So this is secure remote access. How is this done? You will have the insurance component within your environment. This component can be on-premise, an on-premise appliance, or it can be a SaaS model with a connector that you will place on-premise. On this side, you'll have the managed assets that you want to give remote access to your employees and third parties. And this appliance, or this connector, the director will have access to the devices you want to grant access to, whether they are databases, applications, network devices, physical and virtual servers, social media, cloud management interfaces, so you can grant privileged remote access securely. As I said, you won't need a client or to open the port on your file in terms of access. So how do you do that? In this setup, we have the transparent DOM proxy, which is the secure component specifically to which your local component, whether it's the appliance or the connector, will securely connect to this transparent proxy in the secure cloud on port 443, which is the outbound SSL port. So he makes an encrypted connection, and from there, you can securely provide privileged remote access to your third-party users who will access via the proxy, as well as to your internal collaborators who are also working remotely via the proxy. You don't need to open any internet ports. Simply exit port 4343 to connect to this transparent, secure proxy here in the perfect DOM. Let's see if it works. Let me change my screen here. Okay folks, this is the DOM screen, the DOM's home screen. In this video, I'm going to do a test, a demonstration of how to do remote access for third parties. It's very simple. First, there's a button here to request remote access for third parties. As a requirement, I'm going to choose which manufacturer I'm bringing these remote devices from. So I've already registered it in advance, entering its contract, the contract's validity period, who the vendor is, and geolocation at the state level for this vendor, defining which state they can access remotely from, and the user's linked to the vendor, right? Here I only have one user, Jeff Bezos. In the request details, I'll enter the justification for this access. So I'll put here, remote support. Under reason, I have a list of customizable reasons because later I can create reports and charts related to this type of the access reasons. So you can customize these reasons here. I'll select contracted vendor access. In the governance code, I can enter a ticket number. This lets me connect Senha Segura to my ITSM. Whatever you use, ServiceNow, GLPI, or others via API, and it will check if there's an open ticket with this code before sending the request. Next, what's the next step? I'm going to add which devices this vendor will have access to. So I'll add over here. In this demonstration, I'm going to add two devices. A machine here from the AD, IP 10.128.0.12, Windows Server 2016, and a Linux machine here. Let's grab the LX GCP01. I've added both machines for the vendor's remote access. And note, this could be a web interface, an application, or a social media account that you want to make available for your agency to access without knowing the password. Perfect? Next step, I'm going to add which credential this vendor will use to access the device, to log into the device. So here, for the AD, I'll use the admin credential. And for the Linux LX-GCP01, I'll use the root credential. Perfect. And here I'll specify if I'll allow this remote user to only start an RDP, SSH, or HTTPS session, or if they can also view the password. So I'll set it so that for root, they can view the password. For admin, no, they'll just start a remote session. Here, I'll set the limitations for this access. So I can set, for example, that this contract is for 12 months, and I'll set this access to be valid for the duration of the contract, 12 months. I could set it for a week, a day, 2 hours, or a morning, okay? Here are the days of the week they can use this access. So let's set it here, from Monday to Friday. Time restrictions, if you want to restrict the time or customize the time. And how many sessions they can open from the link they'll receive by email. So the idea is this remote user will get an email. Can they have unlimited sessions? No. Can they only have 3 sessions or 5? You can configure that right here. On the next screen, you'll review this access. So who the vendor is, who exactly the person accessing is, the justification for the access, the reason, the ticket code that is associated with this access, which devices, right? AD, Lex GCP01, the credentials they'll use, domain admin, administrator, the access limitations. And when you save here, an email is sent to this person, to Jeff Bezos. Since I just did this as a test, I won't save it, but I'll go to the email. Now, that was sent a little while ago, so Jeff Bezos will receive this email here with the new access approved and its expiration date. The expiration, if it expires, they'll have to request a new link, and then they can access it now. On the first access, before they've registered an OTP, right, a one-time password, it will deliver this OTP by email to the user. They'll register this first OTP. A QR code will appear where they can scan it and register the OTP of their choice, okay? I'm going to pause here because I'm recording from my phone. I'm going to get the OTP here. There we go. So after entering the OTP, I'm here on the web interface for this vendor, for this access that I generated for the vendor, where they have access to the Lux GCP01 machine with the root credential and the Auditware machine with the admin credential. And in the case of the root credential, they can, view the password. So they are able to access this password. However, in the case of an admin, the button right here to view the password is actually disabled, so they can't do it. See? All right? Perfect. So here it shows that they've already viewed the password, they've checked out the password, they have it, they can return the password to the vault here, releasing custody of the password, right? The last accesses they made. And they want to access, for example, the AD to make a configuration on the AD. They go here to the session icon, and Sensei Segura itself will look up the AD password in the vault, open an RDP via web proxy, log into the RDP, and will open the logged in RDP session here. If you notice, look, with the admin, which was the credential I released for this remote access. So here they are, and they don't know the admin password. They only have their credentials there, just the link I sent them. And they can access here, right, the AD as admin. Same thing, everyone, for the Linux machine. Please come here and click on this. Look at that. It's almost like magic, right? It accessed the Linux server right here without needing a VPN client or having to open any port on your firewall at all. So here they can do whatever they want on their Linux. Okay, both sections are open now, which is great news. So I wanted to take a moment to show you something else here that I think you might find interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look together, shall we? Now imagine that when I grant this access to this third-party user, I've not only granted access, but I've also activated the entire management aspect of that access. So first, I have a session recording. So everything that user does within that section will be recorded. Because he's coming here via MindGene's ProxWeb, it could be a web application he's accessing. For example, the Fyro graphical interface for configuring Fyro. It could be an RDP or SSH connection. Here I have command filters. So as you can see, I have the ability to block any command that I want to block, which means the user will not be able to access or execute it at all. I'll demonstrate to you right now that this particular command is indeed being blocked here in this environment. Let me navigate back to the screen here so you can see exactly what is happening. Now here in the Linux operating system, for example, as a demonstration, and then just to be clever, I'll go ahead and change the password since I actually do not know the current password at this moment. What will happen is that an audited command will be blocked. I can configure it to only block the command, to block the logoff command for the user, or to block the logoff command for the user and block the user within the DOM. So I have these action options. In the user action, as I said, there's recording, but more than that, let's go here to the dashboard in the monitoring center. You see that it's already red. There's already a problem here within my Sao Paulo. What happened? GF Bezos. I have two open connections. GF Bezos accessed here via source IP 189.169.81, accessed the root on this machine 10.229 via SSH, and he ran a command here, which was that blocking command. I'll show you the score here, even a high score. It's an action that was taken in the remote access that is of high probability, and I can see in real time what is happening. So here, for example, I opened here. I, as administrator, I opened here. I'll check this access here. So here, as you can see, this is the live view of the session, and this is me, the user, interacting with it. So you see that in real time, it's showing up here on the screen, not just reflecting typing time or command execution time, but the actual live activity as it happens. It's updating here continuously. I can block it, which is like managing the session. On the left, you see the administrator panel, where I, as the administrator, can lock the session. If I want to prevent you from interacting with this session, I can block it, and now it's blocked. As the administrator, I have full visibility and control in real time. I can see everything as it happens, block the session when needed, and also unblock it whenever I choose, right? This gives me comprehensive control over the session, ensuring security and proper management at all times. And allow him to come back. This works, okay? For Linux machines, for Windows machines, for HTTPS access. I can come here and dom him and kill the session. I'm going to kill the root here, right? I killed it. Coming back here, look, the remote desktop server was interrupted because the session in progress was revoked and the connection was terminated. So remotely, no matter where this user is in the world, I can see in real time what they're doing, block their session and disconnect them from the session, right? So this works for everything, right? Let's take the Windows here. Admin, it's the same thing, okay? So I'm here with the admin. I'm going to pull it up here. Look. So here's the view. And on this side is the remote user. Look there. The mouse is moving. Look. Right. I can also simply temporarily freeze the session here. It will then say that Marco Segura has prevented any interaction with the session, right? So I could do that whole part. And I can also, if needed, terminate or disconnect this session at any time. So that's the idea, right? Not just to provide remote access, but to be able to see in real time, see what's being done, block the session, and disconnect the user. And more than that, see the recordings, right? I can come here to audit sessions and say Jeff Bezos' recordings here. Look. Jeff Bezos, right? So there are several Jeff Bezos sessions here, right? Let's put it here, look. Just filter by Jeff. Filter here, look. So everything Jeff Bezos did today, but I'm going to set a larger range here. This user doesn't have much here in PAM. It's not being heavily used. But here, look, the 24th. It's only on the 24th. But I can see here, the sessions I did earlier. Let's take a slightly longer session, 4 minutes here. Look, I can see the session recording, what happened in this recording. So I can see a recording at any time, right? So what did so-and-so do in AD on March 5th? Scored it. I can get through here faster, so I don't have to wait. It might be for a specific time here in the session. All the recording of what's happening within the privileged access environment, every single action, every event, every detail is captured and stored. I can get a date range, whether it's a single day or a span of days, weeks, or even months. There's no longer that issue of who messed with AD on March 5th. No problem at all. It's here, right at your fingertips. You simply go to March 5th, do the filtering, find out exactly who interacted with it, find the precise time, and see exactly what they did, step by step. So I can do that. It also records the commands typed, every keystroke, every command, every input. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens, a lot of valuable information that gets captured. Returning here to our PowerPoint presentation, let me give you a moment to reflect on that before we continue. Let me give you So I showed a session recording here. I demonstrated the session prox web, command filter, traceability. So we can see, to fully trace this user, right? So right here in front of us, you can see the DOM itself, which is the main feature of the structure. Session history, right? So I can do several filters here. When it started, which vendor did it, which discussion they accessed, which credentials they used, all the sessions here. There was an external one here. This one wasn't from Amazon, right? So I can see all the sessions, logins, and login history in the tool. I can export all of this as a report, a CSV report, and I can schedule these access reports to be sent to my email. Credentials per user, therefore the credentials given by users. So here are the credentials I used for all access requests, meaning every time an email was sent granting access to a supplier. Remote support, Amazon Cloud remote support. Test, remote access. So here's the history of this remote access, which user received access, what credentials they were using, the justification for this access. So there's a complete audit of these accesses. I have more than that as well in my collection. Behavioral analysis, that is, for each user. Here, only Jeff Bezos will appear, but for each user who remotely accesses my solution, I will see the period they use it most, the days they are logged in, recording time, average session size within the environment, locations they access, credentials they use, devices, everything drills down. What is the credential? I click here. It shows the credentials they access, which devices they accessed. It's here. If there was any kind of incident, right? Look here. I'll zoom in right here. Look, a high-risk session. So I have a session with a risk score of 90 for this user, which is precisely when they entered that command, right? Or use. So I can also fully manage this user's behavior. So that's how remote access for third-party users works, okay? Now, how does remote access work for the internal user, the collaborator within the organization? It's going to be a little different. I haven't configured this lab, but this is to show you. How does it work? Your internal user, who will be in your AD, in your IGA when they authenticate, right? They'll authenticate here. They can be in your AD, LDAP, in your IGA, or even in the Segura user database. You'll assign a group to this collaborator, for example, Windows administrators. When this happens, you'll configure it so that Windows administrators can only access Windows machines. You'll create what? An access policy, right? And then, when the user who is in the Windows admin AD group logs into the PAM, they'll pass through this access policy, and they will only see the Windows machines. Or if it's a Linux admin, only the Linux machines. Or, for example, they are the admin of the ERP application. Then they'll access the ERP server, the ERP database, the load balancer of the ERP. So they'll only access the devices and credentials related to their job. This grants them the minimum necessary access. And then they'll be able, if you configure it, to see the password delivery. Remember, folks, I didn't say this at the beginning, but when a password is checked out, you can configure it to be changed. In other words, that issue or challenge we're having with social engineering, specifically where the cyber criminal colludes with an internal analyst of an organization and pays the internal analyst to release a password. When you have the PAM, you can simply not allow the password to be delivered, meaning there's no little button for them to see the password. They can't see the password. And when someone does see the password for some reason, maybe for a certain device, it's necessary for you to allow them to see it. As soon as they check out the password, you can perform a password reset with 2 triggers. Time after checkout, meaning 10 minutes after you check out the password to use it, it resets the password. Or by elapsed time, meaning the time the password is gone without being checked out. If a week goes by without anyone seeing the password, it automatically expires that password, okay? So I can perform a password reset, providing this prevention against attacks where internal employees, right, who have access to passwords, might be passing them on to third parties. The admin will have the entire console, for, as I've already shown, user behavior, threat analysis, commands that were run, etc. Alerts, you can connect the alerts to a SIM, syslog, or send them preventively by email, okay? So I'm going to perform an access here showing here the access as if I were a user from the organization. I'm going to open a new window here to access it as a common user. So here, let's say I'm a common user, okay? When I'm accessing it internally, but it's the same thing, okay? This user, who is a collaborator, will access it through Domum. Here, I'm not accessing it through Domum because I haven't configured this access. But the screen is the same, okay? They'll have the same view as if they were internal to the organization. So this user that I just logged in as, B. Gates, I got the password wrong. Let's try again here. I'll type it slowly. So the user B. Gates, right? What can they see? Take a look. All the credentials they can see. They can only see their AD credential, bgates-admin. In other words, their non-privileged user password is bgates, and the privileged user password is bgates-admin. But notice that they have no way of seeing the password, see? They can't. What can they do? They can only perform the access. And in the case of Big Gates, they still have to justify this access. Remote access. So there's a justification workflow here for B Gates to be able to access it. They justify this access. The justification goes to their approver. There can be several levels, okay? Here, look, I'm the approver for Big Gates, if I'm not mistaken. Here it is. Look, Big Gates is here. They're requesting access here. Look, well, pending, right? What access did they request, right? So I'm going to approve B Gates access. I could change the time they can access, the day they can access. Okay, I've approved it, right? And now going back to the Bug Gates browser, if you press F5 here, so it can refresh here, it will now access the AD with the bgates admin password without them even knowing what that bgates admin password is. Perfect? So the internal user has his own access rules. By Gates admin. He has his own access rules there, okay? And when you use Domum, he can access the PAM from anywhere in the world without needing to open any ports, expose an interface to the internet, or use a VPN, simply through Segura's transparent proxy. All right? So in this short video, I've shown remote access for vendors and also for internal users and collaborators using Segura Domum. I appreciate you watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.